Angeba Sojola here. Now, in 1980, right, was the first democratic elections in Zimbabwe, right? And a man called Robert Mugabe became the first black president that was democratically elected in Zimbabwe. Now, there was also a man called Joshua Nkomo, right? Joshua Nkomo was the leader of the opposition, which was mostly made up of Ndebele speakers, which were based uh, in south of Zimbabwe, right? Now, instead of trying to win the hearts and minds of the Ndebele people and the Zimbabwean people generally, Mugabe employed a tactic which is known as the People's War, basically meaning that he employed political military tactics to deal with the opposition that came from the Ndebele people. Now, Mugabe basically develops a unit within the military force known as the 5th Brigade, right? They are also known as the Gukurahundi, which basically means the rain which takes away the rubbish. Now, this 5th Brigade unit was led by Emerson Mnangagwa, the current president of Zimbabwe. It was during these times and these operations where he got his famous name or his nickname known as Crocodile. Now, it is believed that the Gukurahundi, the 5th Brigade unit, was responsible for about over 20,000 deaths in the 80s in Zimbabwe, right? There were also deaths, kidnappings, tortures, and people disappearing without knowing where they have gone to. The people that were killed, particularly from south of Zimbabwe, around Matabela land, right, were basically called dissidents by the Robert Mugabe government. In an interview in the 1980s, right, in the mid 80s, Mugabe described this moment of killings and massacres as a moment of madness. There was also a drought that occurred in the late 70s, which also killed a lot of people. So during that time, a lot of people died or were killed without being accounted for. Some were thrown down shafts, right? And some were hidden or buried in shallow graves, shallow mass graves. Now, this moment of madness, as Robert Mugabe describes it in the 80s, basically brought about a chilling effect on the democratic order and democratic institutions within the country. It had brought about huge disturbances and a culture of fear when it comes to uh, freedom of speech, right? Freedom of association, right? Free and fair elections, right? And basically social, economic, and political activism was also influenced in a bad way. So when we look at Zimbabwe now from the perspective of the 80s, it becomes clear where their political problems started, right? It started in the 80s with the Gukurahundi, right, in trying to deal with the opposition. 20,000 people died during this moment of madness, this period of violence, right? Because Robert Mugabe couldn't see a method of winning the hearts and minds of the Zimbabwean people, right? He used military, he used fear tactics, and he just didn't, uh, was part of the democratic order which was established in the first democratic elections. So The political problem that faces Zimbabwe currently solely comes from this period and the attitude of the government, right, in dealing with opposition, right? So, this is the center of the problems politically in Zimbabwe.